Okay, so today we're going to be talking about inheritance, the basics of inheritance, and that will be the topic of today. I will introduce the topic, and then we will practice that topic using the example in the lab 1 here. Now, we've seen in the past how to design classes, how to create one individual class. Now, in some cases, we will like to have more than one class. Actually, in most cases, most times you're going to be programming something, you'll use a lot of classes. Now, one of the very important relationship between classes is something that also we've been using for some time, but we did not emphasize on it, is the concept of inheritance. Basically, inheritance is you get something from your parent when they die. That's what inheritance, or maybe your relative, to be more specific. But here, inheritance means for a class, basically, first of all, this is a class that is represented this way. I think some of you are related with, or have seen this representation before, right? But the new thing is that when we put this type of relationship, now this means that this class is the parent of this class. Now, you remember that this representation, every time you see a minus, it means it's private. Every time it's a plus, it's public. And you remember the difference between public and private, I hope. What is private? What does private do? Yes? Only the programmer can change the values? Well, you may be right, but the definition can be improved. Yes?
The functions cannot change
Outside the class. Exactly. Whatever is private cannot be changed or accessed outside of the class it's declared in. Now, what we mean with that is that, let's say I'm going to create a project, the Java application, well, let's call it, I will just change the folder. I advise you to create a folder in drive D. I'm just going to call it 393 Muhammad. Well, you should use your ID actually, but I use the semester, so it will be easy for me to follow up. So I'm going to put everything in this 393 Muhammad, and let's call it week 1 intro. Now, this is going to create a class with this name, and then we have the main inside of that class. Now, the thing is, if I create another class, I'm going to call it test. Now, this class test, if I make something that is private int I, if I go back here and I would like to use the class test, I need to create an object from that class. So test T, now T is an object, new test, and then T dot should allow me to see what's inside of that class. But what are those? Is there anything from this class? There's only this I, but it's private. Now, if I make it public, I come back here on T dot, I'm seeing the I, because it's public, so I can have access to it outside of the class. I'm outside of the class test because I'm here in another class called week 1 intro. So outside of the class test, public means I can access it from outside of the class. Now I'm outside of the test, and I can access the I if I want to. Now, if I make it private, that means outside of the class, I cannot have access to that. So that's what this means. So when you try to define the private accessor, you have to just you should mention the fact that you're using outside of the class or inside of the class. But inside of the class, does it make a difference? Now if I have public test like this, this is called a method, and it has a that's a method, but it's a special method. It's a constructor. What is a constructor again? A method with the same name as the class. No.
Different parameters.
No. Something here.
Different data type.
No. Well, there's no return type. There is no return type in the method. If I want to define a method, I'll make it void or non-void, right? Let's say display, and here I'm just going to display the I. Now you see, this is a method, display, but the method has either it's a void or non-void method. But the constructor is a method that has the same name as the class, but it does not have any void, non-void thing. It doesn't have any data type here. It doesn't have any return type. That's the definition of a constructor. So now, this is a constructor, and I'm going to put some value into the I. Now I is private, but this private thing doesn't affect anything inside the class. It affects outside of the class, but inside of the class, even if you do whatever you put, it doesn't matter, it doesn't change anything, because whatever is inside the class is owned by the class. So I can use it whatever I want inside, as long as I'm inside this block, which is the class. Yes?
So if I created another class, the I will not be usable in the other.
Exactly, like here, for example. This is another class, and I'm trying to use the test in another class. And because now the test has this I to be private, now this creates a problem. And what is the problem? If I put my mouse over it, I should be able to see I has private access in test, which means it's private. I cannot have access to it outside of test. And that's what this is going to give me. Now, when I put T dot, I'm also able to see only whatever it's public. Now you see, this one is bold, this one is not. These ones are not. Why this one is bold and these others are not? The one that is bold, it's because inside the class. It's defined inside the class. But what are those? Those are methods, but they're not defined inside of the class. Where do they come from? If you remember, I told you, well, forget about those, don't look at them. In Java 1, we were not paying attention to those. But now we need to understand those, where they're coming from, because they're coming from inheritance, the result of inheritance. So what is this inheritance again? Now, inheritance means I'm getting something from another class. I'm inheriting two things I can inherit from a class, either the instance variables or the methods. Instance variables or the methods. That's what I can inherit from other classes. And basically, if you look here, I do T dot. Now it tells me this is where this method is defined. So this method is defined in week1 intro dot test. Test is the class. Week1 intro is what we call the package. We're going to talk about that as well later on. But if I just click on one of the others, it shows java.lang.object. All of them. Because of a very special case. This is for Java only. All the classes inherit from a class that is called object. What is the class object? Well, this class object, you can have a look at it by just clicking here. When it becomes blue, or you just click on it. Sorry, I need to click on it with the control key. So control space, and let me click on it with the control key. No, here. Oh no, I can't. I thought maybe I would be able to see it by just clicking on it. No, this is just showing me the help of it. Okay, maybe click here. No. Okay, I need maybe to see it. Let me see this class object. By just doing something like that, of course this no t is already declared. If I click object, object is a class data type that I can use. If I click on it, I can see this is the class object. Actually, there's kind of a lot of weird things that we have not seen so far, but you can see that there's some kind of public boolean equals. Remember about this one when we were here doing this t dot. This is the equals that we're looking at. It returns a boolean and it takes an object as a parameter. If you come back here, returns a boolean, returns an object. So I'm inheriting this. That means I can use it. But one of the things that we were using, and we're using a lot, maybe you remember it if I do something. Now remember, what if I do this? It will print something weird, right? If I run this thing, this is going to print this thing, because that's the default behavior when I print an object. Because this test, does it have a toString? No, it doesn't. So that's why if I print something like this, I'm seeing this type of result. But why am I seeing this type of result? Because actually I'm inheriting this from object. Look here on the left, I can see all the methods that are available, and toString is one of them. If I click on toString, oh, it gives me the name of the class and the @ it gives me some kind of a number that is a hash code, which is what I'm seeing here. A name of the class, @ and some kind of a hash code. That's what this toString does. So I was using inheritance in Java 1, but we were not really talking about it because that was not the time. So every class in Java inherits from object all the time. That's why if you just create a class t, you see, I did not mention anything, I just create a class, and by using this t dot, I'm able to see all what's inside the class itself, the class test, but also what's on his parent. Now that's how we represent this relationship. The parent is the superclass, or the superclass is another way to mention the class that I'm inheriting from. Now test now inherits from object. When it inherits, that means it has access to all the public methods and instance variables. Well, there's some details about that, but that's the general rule. That's why I can use some methods like this, t.toString. Now if I don't use t.toString, or if I just do t, that's basically the same thing, but I just would like to show you that actually I'm using a method that is not inside the class t. Now let's go back to the the test here. Do I have toString defined inside? No. But if I'm using this, it doesn't tell me there's a problem. Why? Because I'm inheriting from object, and everything that comes from object is available in all the classes. So now if I run this thing, I'm going to see basically exactly the same thing 2 times, even though this one calls the toString, this one doesn't. But when you do this, actually what you do is call this. It's just a shortcut. But what actually happens when you do something like this, you're just looking for a toString, the result of it, you display in it. That's how this works. Now if I define a toString here, now I'm going to change this toString, how it works. I'm going to do something like this, for example. Just going to display I equal to, and then display something. Now it's me run this again. Now you see, I is equal to 5. Why 5? Because when I call the constructor, I'm putting 5 inside of the I, and then when I'm calling the toString, I'm just displaying what's inside of I, which is 5. But here I'm doing something, that is, I'm defining a toString inside my class, but there's another toString in the other class. When you define one inside your class, well, that hides the other one from the other class. But that's a discussion about it. We'll talk about it later. But my point here is, if I don't have a toString and I execute this, I'm seeing some result, and I'm not getting a mistake, an error message, or some kind of an exception. So why is that? Because toString is coming from object, and if I click on this, I can see that this toString comes from object, and this is inherited by the class test. So every class is inheriting from object. So what does this inheritance mean? The only meaning that now we have is that we can organize our classes by having this class inherit from another class. The main advantage is get some methods, instead of duplicating them, making a copy and paste, I can just inherit from it, and then I'll be able to access it. And a good example is like what we have in the book, and also what this is the example that I took from the book, like this kind of an example. Now we have two classes here, employee and hourly employee. And I just would like to zoom in. Now this is an employee that has a name and hire date, but an hourly employee will also have a name and hire date. But an employee is like a permanent employee, and this hourly employee works by the hour. So we have maybe like a temporary employee. But both of these employees, they have name. So instead of me putting name here and name here, I put the name in one place, and then I make the other one inherit from the first one. When I'm inheriting means I'm inheriting all public methods. But I said public methods. This is private. But I have this, set name and get name. These are public, which will allow me to have access to those. So I will be having access to this variable, but through these accessors.
That's one difference between the private and public. So the private change the name. You can change the name from the first program. But another one, you just get the name or take the name. You don't edit from the name.
The other one gets me confused. What other one that you're referring to?
Our employee.
Yeah, this hourly employee, okay.
You just get the name. You just.
Well, it depends. If I have this to be public, which it is, I can also set the name. Now, I'm not. When I say that this is private, means I cannot use just employee.name and then .name. I cannot have access to it directly. I should use a getter and setter because these are public. The name here, because it's private, I cannot have direct access to it. So if I don't have this get name and set name, well, I cannot access the name at all. But because I have those, now if I have an employee, I can set the name, but also if I have an hourly employee, I can also set the name, because this hourly employee inherits from employee.
How becomes the employee inherits?
How to mention that? There's a keyword that we need to use. When we define this class, we're going to say that this class, so I'm going to mention a keyword. That keyword is extends. I'm going to mention that this class extends employee, and that's what I'd like to show you now. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to start by creating this class first, and then I'm going to create the other one, because this one inherits from this first one, this employee. So I cannot start with this one first, because it needs this one to inherit from. So I'm going to start with this one first. I'm going to create this employee. And how to do that? Well, let me just close these. We don't need these. Let's leave the class. We don't care about that. I'm going just to delete those. We don't need them. And let me create a new class called employee. Now this employee, it's just like a normal class that we're going to create, where I'm just have to have two instance variables, name and hire date. Now this name is going to be a string, and there's a minus, which means it's a private string. That's strong. What about the higher date? No, a date is not an int. We can use a string. That's a simple way to do that. But there's a class actually that is called date that I can use. But this class needs to be imported. And then I can use that, which has the day, the month, the year, which is more complex but more appropriate to be a time, a date class. But I'm not going to use that because I don't want to complicate it for now. I'm going to make it simple, and let's make it a string. So I'm going to rely on the user to type the date correctly. But with the other one, it allows you to make sure that you have more control over the date. For example, the month should not be other than between 1 and 12, or it can convert the month from an integer to a string, whatever. But we don't care about those. Now we're just going to assume that the date is a string. Later on, we will change that just to make it, there's some kind of distinction between like this type of usage, the relationships between different classes. I will change that later, inshallah. But for now, let's just make it simple and keep it as string. Now, I have this to be, that is what? All these are methods, but this is the constructor again, because same name as the class. So it's a constructor. Let me just create a constructor. And I'm going to use this help from NetBeans. You all know how to do that, right? Well, the getters and setters, I'm going to do that, but I'm just looking for this class, this constructor. I can insert a constructor by just using Alt Insert, or maybe just right-click, Insert Code, which the shortcut is Alt Insert, which means it will allow me to have some kind of lot of options to do, and we're going to use a lot of that, as much as we can. Now I'm going to create a constructor, just this. I don't want to do anything. Or maybe I can just mention this. That means if I mention these two, I need now the constructor can use two parameters, whatever, one for the name, the other one for the date, and the first one is going to be here, the second one is going to be here. And I can also generate another constructor, just taking nothing, and if it takes nothing, I'm just going to set my own values. So this is, the name is going to be Muhammad, and the date is going to be today, let's see, which is 10/06/2019. Just for fun, I'm just showing you that I can generate everything from this NetBeans instead of me typing the code. I could type the code myself, but it's better when it's generated. So it's less prone to mistakes. I'm not going to forget and put something like this, because if I put something like this, it's not a mistake, but it's not a constructor anymore. So it's just a method that has the same name, but it's not a constructor. Now I want this to be a constructor. And by the way, when we have two methods with the same name and different signature, this is called overloading. Overloading means when I have many methods with the same name but different signature. Now this is the signature and this is the signature. They are different, but the name is the same. That means these two methods, these two constructors, are overloaded. Okay? Now I'm just trying to give you some kind of review while we're talking about some new things. So let's say, well, first of all, you see here, there's nothing that says that I needed this one. This one says no arguments, but actually we don't care about this, because the setter, normally the setter should need an argument. It should need a parameter here. I should put something, right? Setter cannot have nothing between parentheses. But because this is just to show you that these are methods, we don't care about the details. The details are up to you. So that's what it means. But normally in a test or a quiz, I'm going to exactly tell you what to do. But this is just to illustrate, not look into details, and I'm free to do whatever I need to, like for example do something like this. Now I'm going to create the setters and getters for these two. As you can see, get name, set name, get hire date, set hire date. I'm going to do the same thing by just this alt insert and setters and getters. Select them both, or click on this class, which select them all, and then generate. You remember this encapsulate feat, what it does? If I click on this one and these were not private, it will make them private. But because they're private already, this will not make any difference. But if they were not private, if I made these public, for example, and I click on this one, it will make them private. But I don't care enough for now because they're all private already. So now I can have this get name, get hire date, set hire date. I don't need to care about anything now. And this is my employee. Now let's create the other one, the hourly employee, which inherits from the employee. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to create that. New Java class. Notice that all my classes are inside the same package. When I create a new one, I'm not clicking here, because if you do something like this, it's going to be a problem. Hourly employee. So now you see, if I click here, it's going to put it in a different place. See? Now I want everything to be in the same place, so if by mistake you do that, just click and drag and drop it inside here, and then refactor, and everything is going to be again under the same place. It will make a difference, and we'll talk about it later, but for now just make sure that everything is in one place. This is my hourly employee. How can I say that this hourly employee inherits from employee? That's how. That's it. This means hourly employee inherits from employee. Now the good thing is, let me show you now, this is enough to do something. This is I'm going to create some objects. Employee E1 equal new employee, and I'm going to use this Abdullah, and the hire date is, I don't care. Okay. 393. How about that? Now I can I don't know, display this E1 dot get name, whatever, because I don't have toString. You know what? I'm going to create a toString, so it will be easier for me. I'm going to go back to this one, and I'm going to generate a toString because it's more easy for us to display something. I'm going to display the name and the hire date, and I'm going to keep it like this. It doesn't matter. For me, it's fine.
So what's this?
The toString? The toString allows you to display something. Let me do something. Let me do it like this. For example, it will be easier for me to show this to you by doing something like this. Now this toString returns a text. I'm just preparing a text that I'm going to be able to use when I'm displaying something. So toString is always used when I would like to display but an object. Now how can I display an object? By doing something like this. Now this is E1, this is an object. It has many variables. Actually it has two, name and hire date. But by doing this E1, I'm going to use the toString just by doing it this way. If I run here, I'm going to see it's Abdullah, hire date 393. Why? Because E1 inside the print line is doing, it's like you're calling this. Now this becomes a text because this returns a text. It returns a string. Now this string displayed on the screen. So this is exactly doing the same thing. So that's what the toString does. It allows you to display something quickly, an object very easily. Yes.
Can you go class? Can you go up?
Let me just do something. I just would like to bring back this. Why? Because I would like to, when I run and I execute, I would like you to see that this is an employee, and when it's another thing, I'm going to see it. Yes. Yeah.
Can you go class employee?
Yes.
Why you write two constructor?
For fun, just to make a difference. This one, for example, if I'd like to create another object and I'm lazy to give it a name or whatever, I can do this. It's going to be Muhammad. So I can just display now two employees. If I don't give anything, it will be Muhammad with this date, and if I give it something, it will be whatever I give. So let's give more flexibility. But the point is, I'm having an employee and I'm creating the class with a lot of methods, etc. All of these are going to be inherited by hourly employee. Now the point is, I'd like to show you the fun of this inheritance. Now I'm going to create an object, hourly employee equal new hourly employee. Now let's just hourly employee 1 dot and see what I can have. This is equal get class, but hey, get hire date, that comes from employee. This one comes from object, but this one comes from employee. And then I have get name from employee. And then these are from object, but I have the set hire date from employee, set name from employee. Now, for example, I can just do something like this. Set name, this is Muhammad, and then I can display the name by doing this he1 dot get name. But what if I do this? Which one? Of the employee or the object? You see, let me just do something like this. Now just to show you that this is the hourly employee, so I put this here separator. So this shows me this line here, 27. Let me just fix this so it doesn't disappear. Now this is the result of this line, and this line gives me this. Now let me just change the name, and if I run it, you can see I'm able to change the name. Now this hourly employee, look, it's empty. But because of inheritance, it has everything that is public from the employee, and if I want to add something, I can. Yes?
In the our employee class, if I add a toString,
Yes.
in the end, it will show me the one in the our employee.
Exactly, and that's what I would like to do. For example, I will start with that by inserting a toString. Now toString, well, for now there's nothing because there are no things, but I can do something. See, I can have, let me just copy something from here. I will just copy this, but I don't have name. There's no name here, but I can have get name or get hire date. Why am I having this? I'm inside hourly employee. Hourly employee inherits from employee. Inside employee, do I have get name? Yes. If I look here, you see on the left, I can see that I have get name. All these are public, so I can have access to them. Set name, etc., etc. So as you can see, I can use get name, I can use get hire date, but I cannot use like this. Even though I know that they exist in employee, but they're private, I cannot have access to them. So I inherit only the public things. Now by doing this, I get something funny here. Instead of having this to be employee, because now this toString, when I call this line, this one is going to call the toString from the hourly employee, so that's why I'm going to be able to see this. When I'm calling this, toString from the employee, I'm having this. Your question is gone?
So can you explain again inheritance? What's the benefit in the
So inheritance is the ability to have public or non-private, that's actually the most accurate definition, the non-private instance variables and methods from another class, I'm having access to them inside the new class that I'm inheriting from. So like in this example, we have in this hourly employee, I'm inheriting from employee, which means I have access to all non-private methods or variables, instance variables.
if you delete the toString, what's the result?
If I delete the toString, this one, now notice here it says hourly employee, right? Now if I run it again, now it says employee. Now this one means when I call this one here, this toString, now I have many toStrings. I have a toString inside this hourly employee, I have a toString inside the employee, and I have another toString inside of the object. So when I call a toString, if it's found here, it's going to use it. If it does not exist here, it will look on its parent and see it exists. Or if it doesn't even exist here, let's say the parent here, it doesn't even exist, well, it just goes up to the object. Because maybe it would be nice if I use this to represent that. So because now we have our class object is the one that is like the superclass of all of the other classes. Now when I define the class that employee, the employee is inheriting by default from object. When I created this hourly employee and I said that this hourly employee extends employee, that means it inherits from employee. And this is allowing you to have some kind of hierarchy. Now the toString that I defined, if I define toString here, or toString here, or toString here, this is defined already. I cannot change this object. The object is given to me by Java. I'm not the one who defines it. So it's by default available. But these are the ones that I control. So I have more control on these ones, and then I can control them the way that suits me.
So if something or some code you cannot find in our employee or employee, it will be
It comes from object. Yeah, yeah. If it's available, yeah. Like for example, if I'm here, let me just bring back the toString so I don't control. Hold on, where? Okay, and let's go back here and bring back this. Now, if I just, for example, if I'm calling the toString in this here, this is the hourly employee, the object hourly employee. If I'm calling toString, it just look first in the class. It does not find it, look at the superclass. It doesn't find it, look at the other, up to the top, the object. So the main advantage of this inheritance is that you're able to use something from another class without the need of defining it again. Because let's say, if you look at it, an employee has a name. An hourly employee has also a name. So instead of me copying this part, if I'm not using inheritance, I will have to copy this, and all of these, copy them just to be able to have them available here. And then this class has its own methods, instance variables and methods. Like for example here, the wage rate and the hours. Wage rate means what? Like the rate that this employee is paid for every hour. And then hours means how many hours this employee worked. So we can just add these public. Now these are not public, private. Yes.
I had a class under the hourly employee that extends to hourly employee. employee without class of that?
Yeah, because if you have a class that extends another class, let's say I have this is employee, and this employee is a superclass of hourly employee. Let's just represent hourly employee like this, and I have another class called special employee that is inheriting from hourly employee. It means it inherits from employee because this hourly employee inherits everything from employee already. So if you inherit from hourly employee, you're going to inherit everything that is available, which is the ones, the methods defined inside the class and those in the parents of that class. Yes.
Can I put both of them, our employee and special employee, for the employee?
Okay, that's the good question that I will say. Now you cannot have, for example, another employee. Let's say another employee. Hold on. You can have something like this, but what I meant, you cannot have something like this. You can have many classes that inherits from the same one, but you cannot have one class that inherits from different classes at the same time.
So each class has one parent.
Every time when you extend, you put only one class. You extend only one. You cannot put I extend employee, another one. No, you cannot do that. You extend only one class, which means you always, every class inherits only from one class immediately, but it can inherit indirectly from many others if it's on top of one or top of the other. Like for example, this class over here inherits from this one and also object. And you can have many classes that inherits from the same class. Another class, whatever, employee, E2, that inherits from this class as well. The main thing is that every class inherits only from one at the maximum. Minimum 0, but maximum is 1. And the main advantage is that I have access to non-private methods or instance variables. And this allows us to not having to copy and paste a lot. That's the main advantage. Which one? This one, E2, yeah?
Cannot take any public from our hourly employee.
Yes, they're not related. There's no relationship between the two.
So it's better to be in one line to
Yeah,
take
if you want to, yes, if you want to benefit from whatever that class has, you have to inherit it from it. Yes. Now, if I remember, there's something. I'm going to share some slides, but I'd like to show you, because from the book there's some kind of diagram that shows you different classes inheriting from each other, but I'm just trying to find it. Yeah, maybe I can find it here. I put it somewhere. Old here. No. Courses. Here. PowerPoint. All these are going to be available on the Blackboard, inshallah. Just I'll give you all what I have. I also found some KVPM slides that we use from KVPM. I'll make them available as well, inshallah. Yep.
Our employee inherits two classes.
Yeah, it's not possible. In Java, there's no multiple inheritance. That's the word that they call it. Java is a single inheritance programming language. So you cannot inherit from many classes. C++ is a multiple inheritance, for example. You can inherit from many classes at the same time. But there's some issues that we'll talk about them. Let's say, for example, this is some kind of diagram about an employee. An hourly employee inherits from employee, but there's another type of employee, salaried employee, whatever. There's full-time, part-time, technical, whatever. You can have a full organization of classes That's one inherits from another, just to suit whatever you're trying to do. My point is, all these is your decision. You, the developer, need to know, okay, this class needs to inherit from this one, not the other one, but this should be under this one, etc. So you're organizing your classes the way that suits you, the way that solves the problem you're trying to solve. So that's the idea. So now, if I would like to continue this, which should be here. Now I have this hours and wage rate. Let me just start with the wage rate. The wage rate is an amount, so it should be like maybe double. It can be double maybe. And then private, the hours, let's make it double. Maybe you have 1.5 hour that he worked on, so something like that. Now, having done this, I can just have also the getters and setters, and also the. All right, I have the getters and setters. I'm going to insert them as well. But then the constructor, there's something nice in it, and I would like you to pay attention to the constructor. So the getters and setters are the same thing, but let me show you something nice about the constructor. Something that you can use that is really nice. Now I'd like to have a constructor. Yes. It's not working? So now, when you design a constructor, when you generate a constructor, let me do that again. I'm going just to click here, press here, Alt Insert, and generate a constructor. Now this is something nice. Now when you generate a constructor, you see it shows you two parts here, which was not shown in the first employee. Now this one shows you, okay, here are the fields, the instance variables that you would like to initialize. But then it tells you, okay, what's the super constructor, the superclass, because the constructor needs to call also the constructor of the superclass. Why is that? Because hourly employee has also a name and a hire date, so they need to be initialized. So you're going to be calling the constructor of the other class because this is the one that is going to initialize them. And that's it. It tells you, now if I would like to initialize these two, I would like to select, okay, I would like also to put the name and hire date, and I can select that. And by generate, check this. The hourly employee takes the wage rate, hours, but also the name and hire date. Now this name and hire date, they are given to the superclass to initialize them. The superclass is employee, the class I'm inheriting from. Now if this hourly employee extends employee, that means this is a subclass of employee, and employee is a superclass of hourly employee. And in Java there's this super, means the superclass. The same way like this means this class, the super means superclass. And then this way you can use the constructor, you can call the constructor from the superclass in the subclass. And I need to do that because every hourly employee needs to have a name, a hire date. On top of that he has the wage date and hours. And that's something that is nice because I could also include these, now this wage and hours, wage rate and hours, I can also include them in the toString, whatever. But that's the advantage of this inheritance, is that now this hourly employee, it have like 4 variables, but only 2 declared inside of it, because the other 2 are coming from another place. So I don't need to copy and paste, but just use them. And that's the advantage of that. Employee, the superclass of this class. Yes. Subclass of this one. They are also referred to, our employee is the parent of this one, and this one is the child of employee. So there's this kind of child parent terminology, or superclass, subclass. These are all things that you're going to find in the book or online. Now, I don't want to go further. I would like you to try this. So, for the next few minutes, I'd like you to go to this and implement these two classes the same way that I did, by generating whatever you can generate. You can type if you want to, but it's better that you generate so you don't make mistakes. And also, generating will make things faster, and you can use those when you're doing the exams or assignments, in-class assignments that we're going to do, and things like that. So better practice those, so it will save you some time and avoid some mistakes. Let me free you. Oh, it's already free. So I'm going to leave this one because this one has more details. The other one normally you have it. So this is extend, that mentions how you can extend. You can inherit from another class and generate as much as you can. Now, not after I do this, I have a problem here. Why? Because now hourly employee does not have a no argument constructor. I need to give it 4 things. So I don't need to do this. So what I'm going to do, I need to give 4 things. The first one is a number. Let's say this is how many reals per hour he gets, and how many hours he worked, and the name, and then the hire date is 393. Let's see. Now, by just doing this, I'm going to see that Abdullah is the name, because that's what I did. I initialized it from here. And then the hourly employee, this is the toString from the hourly employee that says Abdullah, and then the hire date. In the toString, I can add also other things. I can add, let's just go back here, hours, and then wage rate. So now if I run this thing, okay, cable, stop bothering. I will have all these ones here. And I need to put maybe some kind of a space. So I have this hourly employee shows more information. So let's try to do that. I'm going to fix this and stop the recording.